And away we go. So before I start the episode, as I'm recording this a lot earlier throughout the day. I usually record during the evening. As especially as I'm recording this, for those that aren't from the UK, the upcoming local elections are coming up, and I'm gonna be voting from home. And yeah, not that it's needed, although it's important that we express our opinions. Nonetheless, even the local elections in May in the UK wasn't going to happen for me regardless. Uh, in a few weeks, I'm preparing to go on holiday with my family to visit my other family, biologically, in Brazil. So I will be cutting down how long these episodes are, not just for the sake of preparing for whatever plans my family has to see my other relatives. It's also cutting down on what each episode covers, on which stories that I read. So there's enough, there's as much quantity of episodes that I record as there are the quality of the episodes I produce. Although people will argue about the quality, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna deny or argue with it. Now, in regards to the group chat, the podcast group chat with me, Eric, and Risk, nothing new has been said since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. So with that being said, which isn't much, let's get right into the news. Norway plans social media ban for under 16s, put age checks on tech firms. On Friday, Norway's government announced plans to propose a national ban on social media for children under 16 by the end of 2026, requiring technology companies to manage age verification. This move follows Australia's world-first ban enacted in December, which resulted in more than 4.7 million under-16 accounts being deactivated or removed since restrictions began. We are introducing this legislation because we want a childhood where children get to be children, Prime Minister Jonas Sture said, emphasizing that daily life must not be dominated by algorithms and screens. At least 14 European countries are currently considering age-based restrictions on social media access, with Denmark, Italy, Portugal, and Spain actively exploring formal legislation or consultations. MPs recently voted 260 to 161 to reject an amendment to the schools bill that would have raised the age for social media access to 16, showing divergent approaches globally. I've also heard from a creator on Instagram, Thomas Pearson, about how, for the third time, the House of Commons, the MPs there, for the third time, they've rejected a social media ban for under 16s for people in the UK. And even though I have my arguments how the government shouldn't do the parents' job, I will also say that there is a concern that young people are spending too much time on social media. That I will acknowledge that is a concern, hence why governments are passing such legislation to begin with. Now back to my arguments that I am so passionate about for some reason. Under 16s is too high of a bar to prevent minors to use social media at any extent. I would suggest under 13 social media ban. And then anyone that's between 13 to 16, they can use social media with parental supervision. Otherwise, the minors can't use social media at all. If the parents don't have a say or have any awareness about what their children are doing online. That is my suggestion. And I have discussed this a while back, many episodes ago on another podcast. Whilst Australia has the social media ban put in place? And again, there has been a video discussed about this by the same creator on Instagram, Thomas Pearson. I do enjoy his videos. Anyway, even when people have the purest intentions to ensure the safety and health of minors, the execution is looking out to be a lot more of a hassle than what experts make it out to be. Again, I agree with the intention of making sure that minors don't spend too much time on social media. How you go ahead with such legislation still needs to be looked at again. Or there is other aspects that experts and politicians are not looking into closely to ensure that this social media ban they're putting in place is as effective as what people want it to be executed in. There is a lot to learn from the social media ban, and even if this does apply to people under 16, who's not to say that this could eventually apply to not just social media platforms, this could then apply to other websites and other apps, just so that children don't access said platforms because there is explicitity, there's nudity, which I don't think anyone should be seeing anyway, and anything that is not suitable for work that children shouldn't be seeing at all, which again should go without saying. Who is to say what is defined as something that's explicit that children should not be seeing, and then they go ahead and playing it? And not to say that people are going to abuse such legislation where under 16 social media ban would then apply to other websites, and maybe even to people that aren't even under 16. There are risks and backdoor potential for such legislation regarding under 16 social media ban to then apply to other websites, which, whilst it has explicit content that shouldn't be seen by children at all, what if then goes ahead to apply to not just people that are children, it now applies to adults as well on the same said websites. I think if Eric was on here, he will have his arguments about the social media ban. Then again, he's not against restricting or banning pornographic websites to be viewed by anyone, which is something that I would have gotten into and would have said already. Then, other than preventing children from going onto platforms or preventing people seeing explicit images, what if at that point, in the next few years, it then applies to any information that would otherwise criticize or call out the government in question that passed the legislation to begin with? Again, there isn't anyone that would dare stretch the validity and the specifics of the said social media ban legislation to go to such lengths. There will be people that will go to such lengths to apply such measures onto such platforms, which then could potentially limit the information that we see online. And now we then get into the argument about, is this website even safe? Should we even allow it to be made aware of such information? It's a whole another can of worms and another tub of hot water to boil. It's a lot to think of. It's most likely, as of now, is unlikely to happen. That does not mean it's not going to happen. It's just unlikely now. Especially when I'm saying this. Everyone should know that we should always be cautious about what we see. Lufthansa loses fight over bailout at EU top court. On Thursday, the European Court of Justice, ECJ, dismissed Lufthansa's appeal, upholding a general court ruling that annulled the European Commission's approval of the airline's €6 billion pandemic-era recapitalization. Irish carrier Ryanair and Condor brought the original legal challenge, with the court concluding the commission had quote-unquote infringed emergency rules designed to support the economy during crises. Ryanair's spokesman added that the German air transport market fails to recover pre-COVID traffic due to high access costs and penal government taxes, creating an uneven competitive field. Lufthansa, which has already repaid the €6 billion bailout cash, said it will quote-unquote engage constructively in the ongoing commission investigation intended to reach a new decision. Amid pension disputes and strike action, the airline announced plans earlier this week to cut 20,000 short-haul flights and permanently withdraw 27 CityLine aircraft from its schedule. I remember having this discussion with one of my family members, especially since my family's going to be flying with Lufthansa to head over to visit my family. And whilst there could be European flights that might see potential problems in the future, closer to the time of traveling. Again, it's the short haul flights we're talking. Long haul flights where destination is on another continent across the globe, those will continue to operate. So, who knows? Only time will tell if the war in Iran continues to impact other economic activity anywhere around the world, which is saying a lot for a particular geographical region south of Iran. And this is scary. I know the Iran war is not relevant to Lufthansa and the EU top court. And whilst I don't mind talking about politics, I try not to talk about it too much, especially since there will be people that do not want to get into that, and that is okay. Even when I do talk about stories that isn't even politics related, in this day and age, as I'm recording this, it's going to be hard not to talk about geopolitical issues. I've watched, and there's this one Instagram reel by this creator that has so much knowledge on technology, especially Apple products. He was talking about the rising costs of RAM or some computer components, and he even said that he tries not to talk about politics, or he does acknowledge that people don't like to talk about politics. That said creator even said, yeah, at this point, politics and technology is pretty much intertwined at this moment in time. And he's right about that. And here in this story is no different. Of course, mostly in the grand schemes of the European Union, German airline industry, everyone is going to tie this back to what's going on in Iran because the Strait of Hormuz is strategic in bringing back and forth exports and imports of oil, which is used to power our cars, the vans, the buses, and even the planes, providing these international flights. So, of course, if there isn't much oil that's being transported to wherever oil needs to be transported, then there's going to be cuts on the flights and the journeys that's been made by anyone around the world. It is becoming challenging to not talk about sensitive issues like this without asking the question, how could this happen? Oh, I get it. It's somewhere in the Middle East. Oh, that makes sense now. Oh, I hate what's going on in the Middle East, says one person. And you know what? I can't argue with that. I'm on the same page as that person. Yep, that's pretty much how life is at the moment. People say that life has gone complicated. Life is only getting complicated because we make it out to be complicated. life for the most part has always been simple. I remember life where it has always been simple and there's nothing that could complicate it. It's just in this day and age, there are complexities that bombard us. I know there is a very important quote or saying by someone. Surely someone will look that up, or some kind of community note will pop up saying, "This is the person that said it." I would love to see something like that in the next few years. South Korean prosecutors deny police request for arrest warrant for K-pop mogul behind BTS. On Friday, the Seoul Southern District Prosecutor's Office rejected a police request to arrest Hae-bi chairman Bang Si-hyuk, citing insufficient grounds to justify detention and in instructing investigators to strengthen their case. Allegations center on the 53-year-old misleading investors in 2019 by claiming Hae-bi had no immediate plans to go public, prompting them to sell shares before the company proceeded with an initial public offering. Police believe a private equity fund paid Bang around 200 billion Korean won, or 135 million US dollars, in a side deal, promising him 30% of post-IPO profits, though Bang denies any wrongdoing. Bang's legal team criticized the police effort, saying he has cooperated for months and remains barred from leaving South Korea since August, meaning he is not a realistic flight risk. BTS launches a global tour following a 4-year hiatus, including a concert this weekend in Tampa, Florida, though legal troubles pose a public relations setback for Hae-bi. So the group, the organization behind BTS, are currently in hot water right now because of something IPO, initial public offering related stuff. I can't say I know much about IPOs. I know that money is involved heavily and does play a huge role about what the money from the IPO that's being used towards covering what expenses, maintenance, other funds towards projects within said company or organization. And I know that East Asian countries like South Korea, Japan, they're going to have laws that are going to be very strict about a lot of things. I'd assume laws in East Asian countries are going to be strict. Not, I wouldn't say there's high regulation standards. Yet there are laws in countries like South Korea, Japan, plus Taiwan, of course, and other countries in Asia. They're going to be very strict most of the time. There could be laws that, well, so what? It happens. It happens here, it happens there. But I don't think that's going to be the case in South Korea or Japan. I believe in those countries, laws are going to be taken quite seriously. Very, very serious. And what happens with Hae-bi? I'm not, I'm not too sure. I would say, as strict the laws are in South Korea, something's going to be done. This case is going to be concluded eventually, and the company, the business behind BTS, they're going to continue doing business as they've always done. And that's not to say that every company is going to get away with it. If a company plays a huge economical role in any sector around the world, then it's not going to be hard for said company to find the best lawyers to tackle with the case and say that what we're doing is part of our plans for our business and so on. And again, that's not to excuse any business negotiation that's been going on with any business anywhere around the world. That's just how the game goes. That's how business and the law goes hand in hand, even if a lot of people heavily disagree with it. And I don't blame them. it's going to happen nonetheless. And I'm not defending Hype, Fancy, Hugh, or anything that the two are doing. There's going to be deals like this going to happen time to time in the next few years. And especially if they're going to be court cases where you doing something wrong, you shouldn't be doing this. Uh, the defendants in question, they're going to say, well, fair point. Yet, what about considering this clause and this fine print? You may think what we're doing is illegal. It's only on the account of this procedure and that condition. Not that there is anything in line. It's just I'm just saying this hypothetically, as if there was some kind of fine print that the everyday average Joe may not be made aware of. It's only the big businesses and the millionaires, mostly billionaires, are made aware of, and they're taking advantage of these conditions or potential loopholes that only the few would be made aware of. They use that to their own advantage to continue with expanding their business however they like. And if people have any arguments with these laws and fine prints, then express your opinions. Protest these concerns. There's nothing stopping them. You just need to start somewhere. Get a movement going. Protest outside the buildings and which of those that you are accusing or saying that these people are doing the wrongdoings of something, and so on, etc. That's just what I would say, and that's just my take on the whole story. And with BTS, they're going to do very well. They're going to make billions of dollars. Everyone, there's no doubt that news stations across the world, and even even mainstream media, occasionally will talk about the dominance and the success of BTS whilst they're on tour. Question is, at what point will BTS be talked about in line with what other events are going on in the coming months of 2026? Not to say that BTS are being acted as some kind of distraction for serious issues. There's a lot of events going on that we may not know about. That's at least my thoughts, my perspective. Everest, chunk of glacier blocks route in peak climbing season. A 30-meter unstable cirrus blocking Mount Everest's route below Camp 1 has halted rope fixing preparations, leaving iceful doctors from the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee (SPCC) unable to find a safe bypass. Preparations are weeks behind schedule for the spring season as teams usually fix routes to Camp 3 by mid-April, though Sherpas currently await melting to allow rope fixing to Camp 2 within days. Nepal's Department of Tourism issued 367 climbing permits this year, mostly to Chinese nationals, while spring fees increased to $15,000 for foreigners and $1,000 for Nepalese. Ram Krishna Lami Chanay, the Department of Tourism Director General, said officials are considering airlifting rope-fixing teams and logistics to Camp 2 to open the route above the Sirak. Climber Purnima Shristha warned that a compressed climbing window could trigger traffic jams this year, as favorable weather is expected only until May. There's a lot going on. Actually, no, I'm not sure what's going on with Mount Everest. I know a lot of people, given that Mount Everest is the tallest peak anyone could climb on planet Earth, a lot of people are going to have desires and have lots of money saved to climb Mount Everest any possible chance they get. And I expect that the challenges of setting up climbing routes and pathways along Mount Everest, it's a lot to maintain and make inevitably clear for tourists that are also hikers to climb Mount Everest. There's a lot there's a lot of logistics that goes behind climbing tourism. So that I know, there's a lot of logistics behind how people go on climbs of very tall peaks, how to handle multiple tourists, and of course setting up the camps, because this isn't a 1 day thing. This is something that goes on across multiple days, maybe less than a week, perhaps. It takes a while to climb up Mount Everest. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into climbing Mount Everest. The logistics of handling people climbing Mount Everest as well as, I'm not too sure. And although this is not on ground news, where I'm always reading these news stories, something popped up in the world of soccer football, and this is a very hot topic which I've heard a lot of mainstream news outlets talk about. Official UEFA suspends Prestiani in the Vinicius case. This Friday, UEFA delivered its verdict in the Vinicius/Prestiani case, while the Brazilian winger had accused the Argentine of making racist remarks during Benfica versus Real Madrid on February 17th. UEFA ultimately decided to sanction the Benfica player for homophobic remarks. The governing body therefore announced that Gianluca Prestiani would be suspended for 6 matches. 3 of those matches are suspended for a probationary period of 2 years, while the first match of the suspension has already been served during the second leg against Real Madrid. As a reminder, Prestiani had always maintained that he made homophobic, not racist remarks. And then UEFA statement as follows: the UEFA Control Ethics and Disciplinary Board (CEDB) decided to suspend SL Benfica player Gianluca Prestiani for a total of 6 official UEFA club competition and/or national team matches, for which he would otherwise have been eligible for discriminatory conduct, i.e. homophobic conduct. The suspension for 3 of those matches is to subject to a probationary period of 2 years, starting from the date of the present decision. This decision, namely the 6 matches suspension, in brackets, includes the provisional 1 match suspension already served by the player during the 2025-26 UEFA Champions League playoff match, played on 25th February 2026, between Real Madrid, CF, and SL Benfica, to request that FIFA extend the above-mentioned suspension worldwide. This article was translated into English by artificial intelligence. You can read the original version in French here. So, UEFA has delivered on the verdict for Prestiani. Now, at first, before I realized he made the homophobic remarks towards Vinicius, I was like, homophobic? Why homophobic? Did Prestiani call Vinicius gay or something? Not saying it's true. I'm just wondering what was those homophobic remarks were towards Vinicius Jr. at that match on February 17th between Benfica and Real Madrid. And now realizing Prestiani admitted he made homophobic remarks towards Vinicius, okay, I get it. And before that was even made clear to me, as of right now, I've heard so much online. I've heard so much information and rumors online at the time when Prestiani made those remarks towards Vinicius Jr., there was a lot going around about how Vinicius Jr. reacted to said remarks. People saying, how come Vinicius Jr. is overreacting to Prestiani's remarks towards him? Yet, when Mbappe heard those same remarks, they weren't so fussed up about it. And I was thinking the same thing. How is it that other black players that played for Real Madrid didn't react in the same way Vinicius did when Gianluca Prestiani made those remarks at that time? And again, now knowing that Prestiani made homophobic remarks to Vinicius, not racist, okay, I can see how this starts to make a little bit more sense. And I will say, you don't have to like what people do, and you don't have to agree what people say. What I will say is, you don't have to resort to such comments. Now, people are still going to resort to such comments anyway. What I will still say is, do not advocate for any violence towards any people groups for any reason whatsoever, even if there have been wrongdoings by anyone that is associated with said people group. Do not stoop to the level of our enemies. Now, what people define as their enemies, it is down to them. I'm not the one to decide that for them. Nonetheless, I'm against advocating for any violence to anyone, regardless of identity, religious background, ethnicity, and other factors of identification for anyone. So back to the story about Prestiani being suspended for his remarks. Well, it was going to happen anyway. And whilst a lot of people online was wanting a verdict like this to be delivered as soon as possible, I know for allegations and rumors as serious as these kind of remarks, it takes a very long while to observe the situation and deliver the appropriate verdict that is reflective of the actions of the perpetrator. And make of that information as you will. What I will say is, what has been delivered has been delivered. It is, yeah. I'm looking at the comments section of this news story on OneFootball. There's this one comment saying, took long enough. Another comment said Real Madrid power basically, but it's correct to do. Another comment said, absolutely ridiculous. Vinny always cries fake racism. I'm not going to say I agree with these comments. It is telling about how that situation unfolded. Now, whatever happens next, for any situations that are similar to this, hopefully the appropriate authorities know exactly what to do for next time. Not that they're going to do it perfectly, at least there is something to learn from this, and how people online will react to such stories that circulate online, where people assume something should be delivered as soon as possible, or at least a verdict that should reflect one's actions. Even then, there's going to be people online that will say that these punishments are not enough for what the story had caused and the attention it has sparked at that time. That is just me. And that is it for this episode.